Hello, fellow duplicate managers. I'm DVD Harrison, and today we're diving into some exciting experiments with our duplicants. We'll be focusing on duplicant movement optimization. Helping us with this task are Harold, Catalina, and Amari. They have athletics levels of 1, 7, and 11 respectively, and all share a strength of 0. This means they can each carry only 200 kilograms of materials at a time. Our first test will focus on horizontal movement across two rooms, one 16 tiles wide and the other 24 tiles wide. Next, we'll compare movement speeds for climbing up and down ladders, also spanning 16 and 24 tiles. These room sizes are common setups among players. The 16-tile room has a total area of 64 tiles, often used for barracks, while the 24-tile room spans 96 tiles, typically used for ranches. Finally, we'll test how different tile types affect duplicant movement to see just how much of an impact they make. Let's start the test with mesh tiles, which don't provide any bonus to run speed. By the way, this isn't my real voice. I'm not a native English speaker, so I'm using ChatGPT to help out. Now for the results. Amari finished in 6.47 seconds, Catalina in 7.97 seconds, and Harold in 11.57 seconds. This clearly shows the impact of their athletics levels on movement speed. I timed the runs during video editing, analyzing the footage frame by frame to pinpoint the exact moment each duplicant fully crossed the door. Focusing on just the 60-tile room, Amari completed it in 2.74 seconds, Catalina in 3.37 seconds, and Harold in 4.97 seconds. Now let's analyze the ladder descent and ascent with a few additional details to consider. The duplicants are descending two sets of ladders, one 16 tiles tall and the other 24 tiles tall, with a 1-tile gap between them to observe specific animations. They're also picking up a reed fiber along the way, so we'll factor that animation into our analysis. All right, here are the results. Amari completed the entire test in 19.97 seconds, Catalina in 24.7 seconds, and Harold in 31.24 seconds. The descent time was measured up to the frame where the reed fiber pickup animation begins, while the ascent time was measured from the frame that animation ends. The animations are fixed and are not influenced by the duplicant's athletics levels. Let's break it down in detail. The animation for starting a ladder descent takes roughly 0.7 to 0.57 seconds. The drop-down part of the descent lasts around 0.40 to 0.52 seconds, making it slightly faster. The pickup animation lasts about 2 seconds, with minor variations of 3 to 7/100ths of a second, which could be due to my editing software or my trusty potato PC. The animation for climbing and standing at the top of the ladder takes about 0.70 seconds, while the hop-up animation lasts approximately 0.33 seconds. Interestingly, this hop occurs regardless of whether the ladder tile is in contact with the duplicant's feet. A duplicant will always perform the hop up to the ladder tile directly above their feet, in other words, the second tile of the ascent. At the top of the ladder, duplicants pause for about 0.07 to 0.10 seconds before turning around to start climbing or descending. That's why all tests were conducted at game speed 1, allowing us to closely analyze and appreciate the incredible detail Klei puts into these animations. If the empty tiles separating the ladder sections didn't exist, the descent time would have been 1.05 seconds faster, and the ascent time 1.16 seconds faster. This demonstrates that climbing or descending a continuous ladder is significantly more efficient than jumping between ladder segments. Keep this in mind as we explore further optimizations throughout the video. Now, let's see how different tiles affect the duplicant's run speed, and how plastic ladders can help them move faster. Since we've already done a detailed breakdown earlier, I'll spare you the full test this time and jump straight to the results. Surprisingly, the results for regular tiles were identical to those of mesh tiles. After some research online, I found forum posts from 2019 where other players noted that both mesh tiles and airflow tiles behave like regular tiles, even though they don't explicitly mention providing any run speed bonuses. As for plastic tiles, they didn't perform as well as expected. Amari completed the run in 6.44 seconds, Catalina in 7.94 seconds, just 0.03 seconds faster than before. Harold finished in 11.47 seconds, improving by only 0.1 seconds. This shows that athletics levels have a far greater impact on duplicant movement than tile types. By the late game, when you can produce plastic or metal tiles in bulk, both theoretically providing a 50% run speed bonus, it might not be worth the investment. At that stage, your duplicant's athletics levels are likely so high that the additional speed boost becomes negligible. For carpeted tiles, which impose a mighty 25% run speed penalty, Amari completed the run in 6.54 seconds, Catalina in 8.01 seconds, and Harold in 11.61 seconds. This demonstrates that the penalty is slightly more punishing than the bonuses provided by other tiles. When it comes to running on ladders, I first tested with regular ladders, and oddly enough, Catalina showed a different result compared to Amari and Harold. Amari completed the run in 6.51 seconds, 0.03 of a second faster than on carpeted tiles, but also 0.03 of a second slower than on standard tiles. Harold clocked in at 11.61 seconds, matching his time on carpeted tiles. Catalina, however, completed the run in 7.97 seconds, the same result as if she were running on standard tiles. This discrepancy is likely because I forgot to replace the door before starting her test. Without the door collision and the associated game logic to check whether it was open or closed in front of Catalina's game object, her result may have been affected. Alternatively, it might be due to slight differences in the animation for female duplicants compared to male ones, though this would need further testing. What do you think? Do you have a theory about this? As for plastic ladders, they showed the exact same results as regular ladders. So, at least in terms of running speed on ladders, there's no improvement gained by investing in plastic ladders. Finally, to validate the tests, I replaced all the tiles with natural dirt tiles. Amari completed the run in 6.54 seconds, Catalina in 8.01 seconds, and Harold in 11.64 seconds, almost identical to the carpeted tile results. This suggests that all natural tiles have a built-in niggish 25% run speed penalty. With this, we can conclude that, in regards to tiles, the best improvement you can make to your base is replacing all natural tiles with regular tiles, mesh tiles, or airflow tiles in areas with heavy traffic. It's also important to avoid platforms made solely of ladders in high traffic areas, as these can further slow down duplicant movement. While it might not be worth investing in plastic or metal tiles, removing the inherent penalty from natural tiles can significantly enhance duplicate navigation efficiency. As for carpeted tiles, as demonstrated by Catalina, even a single tile placed beneath a door is enough to grant the tickled tootsies buff without significantly impacting duplicant run speed. Additionally, carpeted tiles can be placed under a cot or comfy bed to provide the same buff while the duplicant is sleeping. This works because the game calculates interactions based on the tile of interest of each building. The tile of interest is the origin tile of the object and can be easily identified by hovering the mouse over the blueprint. The tile directly centered under the cursor is the tile of interest. When a duplicant interacts with a building, the game treats the duplicant's game object as occupying the same position as the tile of interest. Therefore, placing a carpeted tile directly beneath the tile of interest for a cot or comfy bed ensures that the duplicant receives the tickled tootsies buff throughout their rest. On the other hand, with the November 2024 update and the release of the Frosty Planet DLC, the soggy feet and sopping wet debuffs have become far more concerning than tile choice alone. These debuffs trigger chilly surroundings and shivering, imposing a mighty 5 athletics penalty and a substantial -50% stamina reduction. In our tests, Catalina's athletics dropped from 7 to 2, making her noticeably slower. The -50% stamina penalty is particularly critical, as it can leave duplicants exhausted if they cannot return to a bed in the base to recover. Let's take a look at the results for plastic ladders, following the same testing method used at the start of this video. Unfortunately, I messed up Catalina's results because my cursor was over her while I was trying to center the camera. As a result, I had to estimate her time based on the animation. I'll revisit the game later and test her climb again. Do you think I'll get the calculation right? For vertical movement, plastic ladders showed an impressive improvement. Let's analyze and compare the results. Amari completed the course in 17.41 seconds, with 7.51 seconds for the descent and 7.91 seconds for the climb. This represents a 2.56-second total improvement over standard ladders. Catalina completed the course in approximately 20.34 seconds, with 8.94 seconds for the descent and 9.41 seconds for the climb. This shows a 3.73-second total improvement. Harold completed the course in 27.47 seconds, with 12.44 seconds for the descent and 12.97 seconds for the climb. This marks a 3.77-second total improvement. As before, the time for picking up the reed fiber is not included in the ascent and descent calculations. Curiously, plastic ladders theoretically provide only a 20% run speed bonus. So why are the results so dramatic compared to the lack of improvement seen with plastic tiles? Share your thoughts. That said, although plastic tiles may not be worth the investment and resources, replacing standard ladders with plastic ladders can actually provide a significant improvement to your base. Catalina is back with us to demonstrate her actual climb time. It turns out Catalina's climb time was 9.31 seconds, meaning I was off by just 0.10 seconds. Thanks for the correction, Catalina. See you later, Twinkle Toes. Let's now conduct an efficiency test with our duplicants to evaluate different staircase designs. Most players are used to creating a main shaft in their base with at least 3 tiles in width. This is primarily to allow better gas movement throughout the base. However, since the October 2023 update, this is no longer necessary, as Klei introduced improvements to gas flow mechanics. With this in mind, we'll test several staircase setups to see which one is more efficient and how duplicant pathfinding behaves in each scenario. The test is straightforward. The duplicants need to move resources from tiles with the colored drywall to storage bins with drywall of the matching color. Let's start by observing how they perform with the most commonly used design among players: ladders and fire poles placed side by side. Are you already imagining some different designs we could try based on these animations? For the copper ore delivery, which requires horizontal movement, notice how duplicants waste substantial time grabbing onto the fire pole and ladder instead of jumping or running across the path. Notice how the duplicants seem to make unnecessary movements, like switching between the ladder and the fire pole repeatedly as they go up or down. This happens because duplicants will always prefer to climb up using the ladder and descend via the fire pole if it's within reach. Often, when the ladder is adjacent to the fire pole, duplicants may even climb the ladder as if it were a standard tile. We already know that duplicants lose about 0.70 seconds when climbing over the top of a ladder, and we'll analyze these animations in more detail shortly. The timer starts counting as soon as the duplicants begin their first frame of movement, after the duplicant checkpoint allows them through. The test ends when the duplicant completes their task of delivering the final resource in the route. This happens on the first frame where the text "delivered 200 kilograms" appears, followed by the resource name. Each resource is stacked at 600 kilograms, so each duplicant needs to make 3 trips per resource. As expected, Amari was the first to complete the test, finishing in 2 minutes 10.07 seconds. Catalina finished at 2 minutes 23.24 seconds, and Harold at 2 minutes 49.07 seconds. Considering that each cycle lasts 600 seconds and each block of time within the schedule lasts 25 seconds, a full day or cycle has 24 blocks. Amari spent approximately 5.2 blocks of work time in this test, Catalina 5.6 blocks, and Harold 6.7 blocks. Let's now dive into some of the strange animations and movements we observed during this test. Right at the start, we notice once again that duplicants skip the first ladder tile when climbing up. As before, this animation takes approximately 0.33 seconds. Next, during the cobalt ore delivery, duplicants perform an unnecessary side grab from the ladder to the fire pole before climbing onto the platform. With each side grab, they pause briefly, likely due to the game recalculating the pathfinding or waiting for the next animation to start. This side grab takes around 0.47 seconds, followed by the climb-up animation, which lasts 0.70 seconds. On their descent, we observe another side grab of 0.47 seconds, followed by a drop down from the ladder that takes about 0.40 seconds. When a duplicant is adjacent to a platform, we notice a side drop animation that lasts 0.27 seconds, significantly more efficient than the standard drop down. Finally, during the copper ore delivery, we encounter the most inefficient movement so far. While crossing the shaft horizontally, duplicants execute a double side grab that takes 0.85 seconds, followed by a side drop lasting 0.27 seconds. This sequence to traverse just 4 tiles takes nearly 1.10 seconds. For comparison, in almost the same amount of time, Amari could run across 9 natural dirt tiles. Let's now analyze another common shaft design, a fire pole and ladder with a gap in the middle, often used for a transit tube. Do you think this design will be more efficient or less efficient with the gap? Once again, I'll jump straight to the results. Interestingly, the results were better than the previous design. Amari completed the test in 209.4, Catalina in 221.80, and Harold in 248.77. Compared to the previous times, this design was 0.73 seconds faster for Amari, 1.44 seconds faster for Catalina, and 0.30 seconds faster for Harold. I analyzed the behavior and noticed that the duplicants' actions didn't change. They still performed side grabs between the fire poles and ladders as before. However, after investigating frame by frame, I observed that the side grab animation, even with an additional 1 tile gap, still took the same 0.47 seconds. This means the improved times were due to the duplicants skipping 1 extra tile during the longer side grabs, making this design slightly more efficient overall. After revisiting the previous results, I spent another 14 hours testing and designing alternative shaft layouts. After all that, I can confidently say that the ladder gap fire pole design is, without a doubt, the most optimized. In the video, you'll see a variety of designs I tested, ranging from attempts to exploit animation quirks to designs that were clearly inefficient from the start. An interesting observation came during the aluminum ore delivery stage of the test. The duplicants preferred to descend using the ladders instead of the fire pole. This happened because the aluminum ore and the conveyor loader were located on the same side of the room. I then flipped the positions of the ladder and fire pole to see if they would use the fire pole during this part of the test. They did, but this adjustment made resource collection and delivery on the left side of the room less efficient, resulting in almost identical times. Finally, I performed one last test using the optimized design, but replaced the regular ladders with plastic ladders. The performance improvement was noticeable, shaving off 3.10 seconds overall. This set new records. Amari finished in 2:06.24 and Catalina in 2:18.77. As for Harold, an unexpected level up in athletics during the test made me consider disqualifying him. Unfortunately, Harold had to step away mid-test for a bathroom break due to his weak bladder, effectively removing him from the results altogether. I have to admit, the outcome was a bit frustrating. As the saying goes, what is tried and tested is valuable. Despite trying countless variations, I, like thousands of other players, ended up back at the ladder gap fire pole design. While it's disappointing not to have discovered a better setup, this series of tests at least highlights how much more efficient this design is compared to others, including adjacent ladders and fire poles. All these tests were conducted multiple times with the optimized design serving as the control for science. Now that we've confirmed its efficiency, let's take a closer look at show navigation to explore how Duplicant's pathfinding works and enjoy the adorable animations of their jumps and movements. Catalina is going to help us understand a bit more about pathfinding. When you click on a duplicant, besides their stats, you can also see the tasks in their priority queue and the white line that shows their navigation path to complete the current task. Here, Catalina is trying to reach a storage bin. By clicking the Show Navigation button, we can see all the possible paths available to Catalina. Notice how the optimized shaft design, while being the most effective, is also quite complex for the duplicant to navigate. Every time Catalina receives a new task, the simulation has to calculate all these potential paths and determine which one she will use. We don't know exactly which algorithm Klei used to program duplicant pathfinding. It's possibly an A algorithm or some form of hierarchical pathfinding. Regardless, this process demands significant computational power. The less pathfinding your duplicants have to perform, the less lag your base will experience in the late game. Whenever you see a diagonal line in show navigation, it means the duplicant can jump or climb along that path. To optimize your base, aim to create as many straight lines as possible. Avoid diagonal paths altogether. Use them only in specific situations, such as liquid locks, especially if you prefer the V-shaped design. Additionally, try to avoid building tiles and ladders while the simulation is running and your dupes are actively moving through busy areas. Instead, pause the game to make the necessary adjustments. Every time a tile is modified, duplicants must recalculate their paths. In smaller bases, this recalculation happens almost instantly, and the duplicants adapt without issue. However, in larger maps, it can cause brief freezes or even lag. Finally, avoid placing ladders with gaps directly below them along a duplicant's horizontal path. This setup often forces a side grab on the ladder, slowing them down. Instead, position the ladder one tile above the path. This way, duplicants can still reach it with a diagonal jump when needed, improving their overall efficiency. Many players enjoy using two stacked doors to define their rooms. Our little helper, Gossman, is here to show us why this setup can cause pathfinding issues. She was chosen for this task because she's wearing an adorable hat and absolutely sparkling with energy. Each door represents a possible route for the duplicant, and they will calculate every door, even those acting as walls, when determining their path. Interestingly, Gossman can even use the upper door as a platform to reach a ladder. If you like this design for your base, consider locking the doors or restricting access. This prevents the doors from being included in the duplicant's pathfinding calculations. Any locked or restricted door will force the duplicant to avoid it, so be mindful of potential alternate routes they might take to reach areas you want to keep off limits. Additionally, duplicants can sometimes trap themselves in these setups, as Gossman is about to demonstrate. Oh wait, there she goes. Off to grab a bite of berry sludge. And just like that, she's gone. Now that she's had her dinner and a quick nap, Gossman is ready to help us again. A duplicant only reorganizes their task list and priorities, as well as recalculates their pathfinding once they finish their current task. Even if I set digging to priority 9, Gossman won't adjust her task list or calculate a new path until she completes what she's currently doing. A simple way to force a duplicant to reshuffle their priorities and recalculate their path is to use the Move To command. However, no matter how high the priority is, if the dupe doesn't have a valid path to the task, it won't be added to their list. Lastly, any door controlled by automation that locks while a duplicant is on their way will cancel their path and force them to recalculate. This is why many designs that rely on doors opening and closing through automation can create pathfinding issues for your dupes. Finally, let's move on to the obstacle course test, which is more about observing how dupes move through different challenges than setting records. We started with a section of 8 doors, followed by a stretch of plain tiles, to see if Catalina's earlier speed was due to my forgetting to add a door, or if it simply didn't matter. After testing, it turns out the doors didn't make any difference. The traversal time was the same. That leaves the mystery of how Catalina managed to cross the ladder corridor earlier in 7.97 seconds. It's as if she treated it like normal tiles. Do you have any theories? In this segment, Amari crossed the 8 tiles in just 0.74 seconds, Catalina in 0.97, and Harold, despite his Athletics 2 stat, took 1.44 seconds. In the next part, we get to enjoy some adorable dupe animations as they navigate various jumps and climbs. Klei really outdid themselves with the level of detail. Each maneuver has its own unique sequence. When they jump over a gap, for example, you can see them crouching to build momentum before leaping. I could swear Catalina's jump animation looks different from the male dupes here, but maybe that's just me. Climbing over tiles is another standout. The dupes prepare themselves with a small jump to grip the edge, pulling themselves up in about 0.41 to 0.47 seconds. When they hop down from a ledge, it's quicker, around 0.34 seconds. Longer jumps, like across a gap to a higher platform, take more effort, clocking in at 0.67 seconds. You can really see how hard they work to make it, stretching mid-air before catching themselves. Climbing up 2 tiles is even more impressive. They gain momentum and leap upward, grabbing onto the side to pull themselves up in 0.74 seconds. Coming down the same height takes slightly less time at 0.67 seconds, and they land carefully, bracing with their hands to soften the impact. The dupes ignored extra ladders entirely, opting instead for a quick diagonal jump to the next ladder, which only took 0.37 seconds. It's fascinating to see how efficient they can be, until poorly placed ladders start causing trouble. Misalignment can lead to unnecessary side grabs, slowing them down noticeably. We watch as they climb a fire pole, but since there's no ladder nearby for upward movement, they do so painfully slowly. Once at the top, they squeeze through a diagonal 1-tile gap before finally stepping onto a proper tile. Water-filled tiles add even more chaos to the mix. When ladders are positioned poorly above these tiles, the dupes can get confused. Amari, for instance, ended up jumping straight into the water instead of sticking to the intended path. And with that, the dupes finally reached the end of the course. Each moment along the way was a perfect showcase of how their movements can be impacted by path design, animations, and even small details like tile placement. Since this part of the test was more about observation and appreciation, I didn't record the times perfectly. Still, if you're curious, Amari completed the course in 3:10.54, Catalina in 3:15.57, and Harold in 31.04. The video ended up being 30 minutes long, and I spent the last 70 hours working on these tests and editing. I hope you enjoyed it and found something interesting to learn. Let's do a quick recap. Horizontal movement is faster than vertical, even when using plastic ladders, which are absolutely worth the investment. So, how about building your base more horizontally and giving it a try? We also saw that tiles and doors don't make much difference. The real key to efficient dupe movement is thoughtful pathfinding design and setting up an athletics gym. Get your dupes running on that hamster wheel. We confirmed that the ladder gap tile shaft design is the most efficient layout after hours and hours of testing. Using show navigation taught us how important it is to spend time planning your base with minimal diagonal paths to avoid unnecessary delays. And finally, we watched all the dupe skills in action, noticing how poor ladder and tile placement can seriously disrupt their pathfinding. I wanted to include some additional tests in this video, like comparing horizontal versus vertical base layouts and timing their efficiency, or experimenting with different schedules. But for now, this is it. See you, Space Cowboys.